Beep boop. All right, stop music. Stop music. I gotta sneeze. Hang on. Listen to the music for a second. Even though you heard me sneeze. That was a great intro. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the old Sterling stream. Alright, now the music will stop. Find the music. Boop. Nope, that didn't do it. There we go. The wind is blowing today, like 20-mile-an-hour gust right now, so it's really dusty, and I don't have corona. Ugh, come on, chair.
Close the window.
Well, I like the wind. It's the wrong side of the chair. All right, so everyone, I'm glad that you're here. We got some people already up in the chat, cracking open a cold one. Cold sparkling water. I don't always drink. But I do always drink sparkling water. Now my nose is running. So tonight is going to be cool because it's not going to be about ham radio. Oh, wait, what did you say? It's actually going to be about kids these days. And what do I mean by that? I literally mean kids these days. What are they doing? Like, actually, though. The question is, like, really, how can we use what the kids are doing these days, for lack of a better term, to help us develop ham radio, help them develop an interest for ham radio, and help us develop a way to make ham radio enticing or interesting or what have you, if that makes sense. So, pardon my snuffling now that I have. Man, that sounds wonderful, I'm sure. Let me... First, I have some notes. First of all, I have a Patreon, which many of you probably don't know, but I got my first ever Patreon on Patreon, or patron on Patreon, which and it sucks because I don't even know who he is. And Justin just gave me her Biscoff.
No way.
She's eating it's like a snack. It's a very good snack. Of course, I gotta do a authentication code. Drink real quick. Check it out, and because I want to thank him, because I that's what you're supposed to do, right? And I don't know if he's even a patron anymore, or she, or if like they have like hid their thing. Patrons. Oh, I have two patrons. Oh my gosh. Adam Melancon and Sean Schwartzmiller. So thank you guys very much for being my patron. That means a lot to me because I've never had patrons before. So wow, it gives me a lot of inspiration, even though it's not like I'm not bringing home big, loads of bacon there. But I use DaVinci Resolve for video editing, and it's crashing a lot. And I want to get Adobe Premiere, but I don't want to buy it if I don't have like a break-even point, because like I have a very tight budget, and adding like $20 a month for Premiere means I have to throw away like 4 of my phone like subscription apps, which we'll talk about why that's a problem or why that's a thing these days for kids and how they spend their money on their phones and stuff. Oh man, I could do this here too. I gotta do another preparation for another thing I'm gonna talk about by going to the ARLQST thing. So again, thank you for supporting me on Patreon. If you want to do that, patreon.com/N0SSC, I think. I don't know, but you don't have to. I'm not asking anybody to. It's just there. It's in my comments in every video, and I definitely don't ask anyone to. I'm not here to make money, but if you're able to help me buy Premiere Pro so it doesn't crash a million times, that'd be cool. I also really want a new camera, but I don't think I'm ever going to get patrons to afford that for me. Okay, the second thing I was going to talk about is very interesting. In the QST this month, November next month, I guess, is this article, "The State of Ham Radio in Japan." So what's really interesting about this is how much like data we have. This Ryota Roy Bayashi a C6IM has available on the Japan amateur radio operators and licensees. It's very interesting that they have two types of license: the operator license and then a license for every station they operate. And so you can see, like, there are 3,120,290 Class 4 operators, but there's only like 294,000 station license. So it's very interesting because it's telling me that there is station license. Yeah, there's a lot more. There's a lot of hams out there. Like 3 million hams in Japan, but only so many of them, like I guess 600,000 as of 2018, actually have station licenses. So it's like, do they get their license and then just don't get a station? But that's interesting, and I'm kind of glad we don't have that here in the U.S. because it's a pain. But we do see the FCC's trying to make us spend $50, so it could be a slope down that path. I don't know, and also losing our our 3.5 gigahertz band. But this is one particularly interesting statistic here, and that did not work at all. How do I zoom? Nope, that's not the zoom button. Oh, come on. Oh, it's over here. So they have the age of the amateurs in Japan, and it looks astonishingly like the age of hams in I wouldn't say in the U.S., but all over the world, but mostly in the U.S. because the N8RMA survey did that. And you've seen my video before of, the problem of this hump of hams age 55 to 80. This distribution of hams in this kind of region. What is going to happen in the future? Is that hump staying there? Like, if you took this picture it says as of March 7, 2019, but if you went back every single year, does that hump stay there, or has it like gradually moved from like the 16 to 20s on upwards, and then what happens after that? Or has it just like stayed static, like stayed the same for all of these years? I really want to know that, and if the Japan Amateur Radio League has that information, I think we can portray, or we can what's the word for, like, we can understand the amateurs in the entire world, because it's amazing how common it is for more older people than younger people to enjoy the hobby. Europe, it'd be also interesting there, as well as IRE Region 3, Asia, and everything. But this is Asia. This is Japan. So I think this is indicative, because there's so many hams in Japan, like millions. It's indicative of what the world is seeing. So it's curious, like, what happens in 20 years when these 61 to 65s are now 81 to 85s, and over they get over the hill, over this hill, and move on to their next stage of life. I'm trying to be really polite about it. I'm sorry if it sounds terrible, but like, it just like blew my mind, and so that's why we are here. That's why I am here. I'm here to help you, old OMs, not necessarily all old men. It's just kind of the word we use, I guess. But other hams, older hams that are not kids, not youth, that are already established in the ham radio, to understand ways and means of making ham radio fun and great and super cool and interesting for young people. And that's like all young people. That's like 8-year-olds and 18-year-olds and 28-year-olds and even 38-year-olds, because as we saw in that graph, young is kind of a relative term. If you're not, if you're outside of that bubble, that big peak, then if you're to the left of that, I guess you're younger than that, then you're young in ham radio. That could mean you're 45 years old, and you're young in ham radio, and I don't think that's I think a lot of people would agree with me there. A lot of people think, Oh, Sterling, how can I get my kids into ham radio? I got a lot of emails about this. Like, how do I get my 10 and 15 and 7-year-old boys and girls into ham radio? And I'm like, oh, well, it might be harder than it seems, because I'm mostly interested in trying to get other people to figure out the ways of doing that, like the actual discrete ways, but by giving them these kinds of tools and advice on how to do those things. Because I'm like a generalist. I'm trying to go for the broadest picture so I can help as many people as possible. Who knows if that's the actual, like, that works. But anyway, I'm up to 4 patrons now. What? Wow. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Oh, good game. I missed your stream because I took a nap. I'm sorry, but thanks for being here. And a new pot of coffee. Oh, man. So yeah, good game too. I really loved your Padawans taking over video, the POTA video. That was amazing. Just watching the kids like literally take over. That, in every sense of the word. That is not clickbait. That is exactly what they did. You adults left the table, and it looks like Jerica and then the younger girl and the boy made a whole bunch of contacts and had a whole bunch of fun. And that's just what I want to see happen all over the place. Good game. You are a really good role model in that world.
One I watched?
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
The kid.
Even my wife watched it. She's saying, like, is that the one I watched? And I said, yeah. And she was like, this is actually really cute.
It was really cute.
Okay, so kids these days. Boop. What are they actually doing, though? So this was, again, one of my presentations for the ARRL field organization kind of conference. They're not a sanctioned field organization, like a sanctioned Zoom account or Zoom meetings, but they are basically all of the section managers, the emergency assistants people, and etc. So I want to get this message out to a broader audience, and here we are with my 16 best friends in YouTube. Give or take, because I don't know if the YouTube number is always accurate. The big problem with these live streams is they really have very poor reach. They don't do very well in terms of the YouTube algorithm because it's not an original video, so it just goes to whoever sees them, and plus or minus a couple hundred. Right now, I think the first couple up to like 200. So share these videos. If you want to share these with your clubs, or if you want to invite me on to speak to one of these topics, then hit me up. I'm more than willing. So I'm this little guy in the corner here, and I'm going to start talking about kids these days. So what are they doing? Literally, they're doing this stuff. I'm like in the way of one of these things, but it's okay. They're on their phones. There's nothing. It's just that. That's what they're doing. They're on their phones. They're living their lives online, and a lot of people have we've come out with this documentary called The Social Dilemma, and I really recommend that. Let me pull it up and take a look at it. It's this thing on Netflix. I think you can get it in some other places, but it is actually scary. With how basically advertising companies and obviously the companies like Facebook and mostly Facebook and Google, Twitter not so much, but also a little bit of Twitter. But Twitter tries to really push against the kind of disinformation and over advertising and that sort of thing. But it starts out really simple, and it gets out to be crazy, and it has a lot of implications of today. It's really recent, so oh my god, just watch it. It's it will make you want to take your kids phones away. Mm-hmm. I promise. But anyway, but for now, the kids are going to be on their phones, and what does that mean for ham radio? Very MK Ultra, very true. And I love that I put a Tide Pod up here. I didn't mean to say that kids are popping Tide Pods. That's not what they're doing. But kids are hopping onto challenges and doing silly, goofy things, and sometimes very dangerous things. So that's why that's there. But they're not actually doing that anymore. Thank God. So anyway, they're living their life online. What does that mean for us hams? What does that mean for them? And how can we help? How can we do something? How can we do our PR different to get into their feed? Is kind of what I'm getting at. And there's this really important thing I want to always want to talk about, is that kids these days are very open, and sometimes they're very closed. They are the generation that I've seen that has been most able to come out of the closet in terms of like their sexual identity, their gender identity, who they really feel they are as a person. There has been more and more research poured into things like anxiety, autism, ADHD disorders, mental health issues, and that sort of thing. So those things are everyone's super hyper aware of those things, and kids themselves are the younger generation is like the ones that are like benefiting from that awareness. So we are able to help them better. Obviously, right now we know the racial like sensitivities and racial injustices going on in the world ever since George Floyd this year, and Trayvon Martin before him, and Michael Brown before him. Lots of injustice. Breonna Taylor, I don't want to forget her, has been going on, and these kids are at the front lines of watching it, come up on their feed. And so I'm sure many of you have like grown up in eras like the 60s where it was a huge deal, like the civil humanities, or is that right? Civil rights. I'm like really scatterbrained right now. Civil rights were like a big deal, and that's just exactly what's happening now, but it's at a much bigger scale. It's bigger than it's ever been before. And then kids these days are always learning what's beyond what's taught in school because they have this computer in their pocket, this connection to the world. And so young people are very in tune with events and news, and they're developing like very, broad and sometimes very like specific like political beliefs and religious beliefs and that sort of thing. So that's these are things to keep in mind about young people. That especially, that a lot of hams I've noticed, and this is not scientific, this is anecdotal, but like say a young person comes into your club when COVID is over. I've noticed that a lot of those young hams that do that are getting over a lot of anxiety and a lot of like introversion to step out and introduce themselves to the world of ham radio. And so what that means for us is to like be like friendly and be open to them and welcome them instead of like have a cold shoulder and ignore them and like just look at that young person at the side of the room thinking like, are they in the right place? Because I was in those shoes before. I was that introverted shy kid who really wanted to be a part of this ham radio community when he was 15 years old. Walked into a club's meeting and like everyone in the room had gray hair. Everyone was a man except 2 people out of like 20. And like everyone just kind of looked and no one said hi. And we left the meeting, and I was lucky to have my first Elmer K0ZH come out and talk to me like personally. And he ended up, loaning me my first radio. And because of him, I think I can credit him for like all of the things I've done today. Because of that, because he reached out, he welcomed me in, he said, what are you doing, what are you up to, are you a ham yet, do you need like he asked a bunch of questions, and I knew what I was talking about because I did so much prior research before I came in, so I wouldn't look like a dummy. But even if a kid comes in, a young person comes in and doesn't do all that research, don't bombard them with like, have you taken the test yet? Be welcoming and be like exactly what Steve says. Don't be that club member. We had somebody who got, oh man, one person in our club, a young lady, came in to our club, a local club here in St. Louis, and it's mostly retired old men. And she comes in, and like her first impression, besides like me introducing her and saying, "Hey, welcome," and because we met before at like a Tapper DCC here in St. Louis, and so I knew who she was, and so I just let her like kind of hang out. And the first person to talk to her besides me was this guy who literally looks pregnant. Like he has one of these beer bellies that is like as hard as a rock, and it sticks out, and a little bit of his belly is just kind of like hanging out. And first thing he says, "We need more YLs in this club. You're a YL. Are you going to stick around, get your license?" I'm just like, really? And she left. She never came back. I've been in email correspondence with her, and that's like kind of the thing. Like, seriously, don't do that. Don't be like that guy. All right. So, second thing I want to talk about That's really Papa Sterling streams talking about a pregnant man.
That part probably did not need to be said.
Well, he wasn't pregnant, but like, oh my gosh. All he needed to do was wear a slightly larger shirt. Okay, but anyway, youth safety is another imperative. This is a thing where, you should take a training to understand these sensitive topics and understand these like broader senses of youth safety and dealing with child abuse and dealing with even harassment and smaller things, bullying, cyberbullying, and that sort of thing. Always important to be aware of that kind of stuff. Yoda, for example, and it's run by the Scouting, the Youth Protection Training. It's really good. Youth on the Air, all of the volunteers who work with young people are youth protection trained, so we get our certificate and it says we're good. But even if you're not doing anything specific, this is really eye-opening, and it tells you a lot of, it trains you. It educates it has the potential to educate the general populace about youth protection, I guess. I'm like stumbling over my words, so take another drink. Okay, now we can actually get to it. Kids these days. Kids in ham radio these days. I did tell you this wasn't going to be about ham radio, but here we are, talking about kids in ham radio. What are they doing on ham radio? Well, they're online. Like we said before, young people are always online, and that's the same case in ham radio everywhere. So on the air, they're doing remote. Like I have remote ham radio, remote hams. There's a whole youth program that remote ham radio does because it's cheaper to get on a remote than it is to buy a ham radio. But they are also on DMR because that's the cheapest way to get into a digital internet-linked protocol system type thing. A lot of them have beta things and everything, but DMR is technically on the internet, so I put it there. Echolink, is an app. Yeah, Yark, shout out. Also, David, hi. I just kind of like realized who you were. Thanks for hanging out, David. He's the David Must. Yeah, you're the founder of Yark. I was like, am I seeing this right? Unless you're not. You're a different David. You could be a different David. Who knows? Echolink, it's an app on your phone. Easy enough. Like it's a way to get onto repeaters from your phone or from your computer. And then there's a lot more people talking less and experimenting more. And for some reason, I've watched Hamilton so many times. Yes, that it is. It is that David, founder of Yark. The one, the only David, KF1SHY is here in the chat, boys. Oh, man, that's cool. Anyway, Hamilton, talk less, smile more. Well, kids these days in ham radio are talking less and experimenting more. They're not really smiling, but maybe they are. They're happy experimenting and doing more technical kind of tinkering type things. A lot of the old guard and us general population hams, I guess, are wondering why our repeaters are silent, why our bands are dead, this and that, and how that can be when there's so many hams out there. Well, it's because they're just playing around. They're listening. A lot of hams love to just listen. A lot of young hams love to just listen, like with WebSDR and stuff, QESDR. And then online, off the air, we have Discord communities like where we're getting to. So we have Yark, for example, the Young Amateurs Radio Club, which is an entirely Discord-based community, as well as the Illinois Young Hams Club, which has kind of been a spin-off of Yark that just focuses on Illinois. And there's been a handful of other spin-offs like that. Centering around different geographics or different interests. Yark is kind of the general interest club, and then you have some contesters and some friends of other friends and friends and friends and friends, and huge community. It's hard to keep track of, honestly. And then you have communities that are based around YouTube, like Ham Radio Crash Course. I don't have one because I'm not as famous as him, but that's a perfect example of a large group of younger hams, and I really do mean younger because the people on a Ham Radio Crash Course, even though they're not like young adults or even teens or whatever, there's a lot of them on there, but most of them are probably 30s, 40s. They still meet online and they're still young, so it's very vibrant and very it works for them. And then you also have a ton of Facebook groups, and I just wanted to mention. See ya, Tim. Thanks for hanging out. I just wanted to mention that because kids are really getting off of Facebook because Facebook kind of sucks. Honestly, I don't have like a particular reason why besides like the fact it's gotten just overloaded with like polarizing dynamics, like whether it's politics or whether it's like conspiracy fringe theories kinds of things, or whether it's just like your crazy mom spouting hate on there or whatever. It's like a little bit off, but ham radio has just a glut of Facebook groups. Like I believe like at least 10,000 different Facebook groups out there. And what's interesting about them is like in every one of them, it's like the same 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hams in them. So it's like there's very little diversity among each group, but like they're all on different topics. So I do these things sometimes when I need to publish like an announcement or a periodical or an article or something to share something big, news, whatever. And I'll open up like a dozen ham radio Facebook groups and I'll spam them. I'll spam the link to every one of them, and most of them get in, and the same comments show up in every single one of them. Or when I was in the IEEE Spectrum, the article from Julianne Pepitone, which was what was it titled? The Uncertain Future of Ham Radio. They I got a lot of comments on all these Facebook groups, like 20 of them, and they were from all the same people, just in different groups, like with different kind of spins, and a couple of them had different people, obviously, but like it was interesting, and most of it was hate. It was not very positive comments. Some of them were, but like, just Facebook. But there are still some people on Facebook, so I have to put that there because it's still a huge community. And I think at some point I mentioned like break-in community or breakthrough communities like Instagram and TikTok. And I was gonna like talk about a story. Oh, I already talked about my story in my previous video. Not previous video, but my presentation to the club. I gave this story about a young man who was into ham radio and was really shy and walked into a club and got his first radio and that sort of thing. And I already gave that away, so that's that story. But if you want to see that, go to Dan Marler's page on Vimeo. I'll leave that to the reader. But I also want to talk about, going back to this slide, like I was mentioning, breakthrough communities. For example, Instagram and TikTok. And I had TikTok up there on the first page, remember? Instagram, owned by Facebook, is a place where more young people are on, obviously. And us hams are just now kind of infiltrating it. I've been noticing more and more more and more hams subscribing or following me on Instagram, even though I try to keep my Instagram like not ham radio related. I try to keep that for my like family and friends, but then people find me and then they try to add me and I'm like, okay, fine. But then now my Instagram is just full of ham radio. And so that's also a good thing. Instagram doesn't have groups, but they do have ways of sharing things like reels and stories, and the hashtag kind of like coalesces all these posts together, and it's a really good way to like to interact and advertise, PR wise for to the younger generation. Bubble in my throat. So one of my pieces of advice there is if you're a PR firm, I guess, if we have one in ham radio, like say ARRL or even your local radio club, and you want to do some outreach that's beyond your insular community, like beyond just your Facebook page. Instagram is a good way to do that. Their advertising on Instagram is a really good way to do that because there's so many ads on there, and if you pay like a certain amount, it's a very small amount, you can get your ad to show up to like hundreds of thousands of people in your area. And if like 3 people show up from that ad, then I think that's a worthy investment, right? But even then, you don't have to put out ads. You just put out an Instagram post, keep it regularly updated with like interesting content, and Bob's your uncle. People follow, people get interested that are outside of the ham radio world, which is really important, kind of the common thread through all of these. Common thread through all these presentations is how I just dropped my thought. I forgot what I was talking about. But anyway, and then also TikTok. Now, hams aren't on TikTok. I think there's like 5 hams on TikTok. In fact, Josh Nass was one of the bigger hams on TikTok, and then because TikTok is scary and owned by China, and we have like this ominous threat of it being banned in the U.S., a lot of people have left. And so now other competitors like Instagram is putting out Reels, but it's super hard to use. And a lot of people ask like, okay, what is TikTok? Well, TikTok is like YouTube. It's like right here, except it's short videos that are usually really funny, and it's backed by a really, really good algorithm. I think you're done watching this slide, so let me transition to my big face. A really good algorithm that really knows your interest and really knows like what you want to, basically what you want to watch. And so I've had a TikTok on there, and it was really interesting when I posted this video of me learning CW. Don't tell me I have to sign in. It got 181,200 views, and it's literally just me like typing out some CW and messing up. Oh crap. And TikTok's like, oh, you're a new user, and so I'm going to put this video in front of like 181,000 people, and it got 1,200 likes and 21 comments of people going, what? Like, no one knew what this was. The people who are watching this video had no idea, which is what I'm getting at. They have no idea what this is, and it makes them go, what is that? Is that Morse code? I'm going to go Google that. And then that might just might trigger an interest. A couple other ones I have all have under 1,000 views, except for my DX Idiot TikTok. It was like raining when I had my antenna, my DX Idiot all put together. But it's just literally like there's a video, there's another video, there's another video, there's another video, there's another, there's another, there's another, and another, and so on and so forth. That's how TikTok works, and that's why it's so addicting. And it's not really a community, but there are these like viral things that pop up. And so how can ham radio get into that? Well, we can start a hashtag and try to like get ourselves viral, but I'm sure it's going to be another 5 to 10 years before there's any level of adoption of hams on there. So but with that, sorry I didn't have a super compelling story. I do have a few learning adventures for you. And no homework tonight, in fact. So let me pull up that again. Kids These Days podcast from Michigan Public Radio is an actual podcast done by kids that are talking about like the struggles, the challenges, the successes, the failures, and the lives of young people these days. And it was really recent. I think there was only a few episodes. And so it's pretty easy listening. It's not like crazy or anything. It's not like the crazy YouTube. Hey there, guys! Welcome to my YouTube. It's sensible. It's actually nice. And then, here's the website. Boop. So yeah, I don't think they're making any more episodes, but it goes into some of the scary things I was mentioning earlier: race, fear, anxiety, identity, and sexual identity. Life, phone, even drugs, struggling for perfection, counseling, and that sort of thing. So it gives you like a really behind-the-scenes view of like what's going on in the minds of kids these days. And then back in the ham radio world, you have Recruiting Youth into Ham Radio by one of the former ARRL youth editors, Duncan McLaughlin, KU0DM, and it's a 2-part series that. It goes through his speech of recruiting youth into ham radio, and it's kind of blocky and hard to hear, but I think it's a really good thing to listen to. So go check that out, and I'll. How can I? It's like annoying. Like this is a PDF thing, and I can't. Oh, I have to click that button. Put that in the chat real quick. And speaking of chat, you're welcome, David. I'm glad you feel inspired. TikTok is already monetized by user data. Yeah, just drop TikTok, and yeah, that's what I mentioned because like people are worried about TikTok selling your data, and for a lot of people, that's not cool, man. So they leave. And the fact that TikTok is like literally trying to get, the Trump administration is trying to ban TikTok for doing those things, and they've already banned like a lot of Chinese devices like ZTE and Hikvision and that sort of thing. It's a scary proposition to be on TikTok, but for me, I don't actually ever use it. It's just sitting there. It's on an iPhone, so I believe Apple's privacy keeps my stuff private. So, but I should also probably delete it. LMAO. TikTok Radio Club. Okay, so what did I miss in the chat? Wasn't too much chat today, but thanks for hanging out. I think I'm done. Am I done? Yeah. The last slide was just homework, and there's no homework tonight. Homework. And it's been 43 minutes, and that's usually about how long I go unless I start rambling on. What are your guys' ideas and girls' and ladies and gentlemen? This is a workshop, and this whole series is me informing you and inspiring you to start thinking of ideas of how to bring ham radio into the future, into the more hands of young people, and so I'm looking at the comments, waiting for something like that to show up. So, that's why I also have the homework, so I can see what people are thinking when they watch these videos, and that sort of thing. So if you have comments on that, leave a comment here in the video if you're watching later, or in the chat if you're watching in the next 5 minutes, because I think that's about how long I'll be. And or send me an email at n0ssc.com. Sterling at n0ssc.com. So that's all I have to say. They take off once they get going. Check out good game. Yeah, that's true. David, you say a lot of people are mic shy, especially when they're younger, and that's true. I was one of them. I think dozens and hundreds of other hams have went through that, and Philip, you're right. Once they get going, they get going. Because I was mic shy for a very long time. I had a radio for like at least a year, probably 15 months before I clicked the button, and I had a license for about a year before I clicked the button. And it just took like constant listening and constant like trying to be aware of like what the protocols are, if that makes sense, and what the etiquette is, so I just didn't look like a fool. But my advice to the young people out there is just click the button. People aren't gonna like ostracize you for messing up a little bit. And guess what? Another Steve's coming. Gosh, it's crazy right now. It's not blowing like right. The wind's not blowing too badly, but I never know Connor Black. How does Connor keep showing up in my streams and my life, honestly? Connor, W4IPC. He's kind of been everywhere. He's a young person. Some people say he has a very, very big mouth. I'm sure Danya says it. But he was on my last stream too, because he was playing a joke on the operator of the one of the ship stations. But he's a big proponent of remote ham radio. He's a young person. I think he turned 18 recently, or will be, or is 17 or something like that. So very good. Youth are definitely more into making tinkering. Do you find that youth are more into making? Yeah. More into making. So Oklahoma Ham Radio, you say that. Do you find that youth are more into making? That's a definitely yes. And making's kind of a broad term to me, because it's kind of been well, I don't know, I wouldn't say co-opted, but making has changed into hacking, I think. And there's still makers, but I think there's more and more hackers, and it's more and more computer-based, more and more software-based. I think a lot of young people are into hacking, and it's not like hacking your bank account or anything. It's just making software, making hardware do weird things, or interesting things, like or just like breaking things open. Like, what's in your phone? Break it open, find out what's. There's a really good example. The Good Watch. I forgot what it's called. KK4VZC. It's a ham who put in a POXAG receiver inside a calculator watch, literally. That's the kind of hacking I'm talking about. Post that in the chat. I think it was KK4V something something VCZ who made this, but it's an amazing just an absolutely amazing project. There's a whole wiki on it. Put the wiki in the chat. But hacking like that and doing weird things with hardware and software and seeing how they work and that's just like what even kids back in the I don't know when ham radio was first in its infancy, that's what the original hams were doing. They were hacking and they were playing around. So yeah, young people are really into making and as they get older and more into ham radio, they get more into appliance operating, and that's kind of where I'm at. I like to just get a radio and get it on the air. But I also, I started out like hacking too. I started out playing with building computers and pulling radios apart. You can see my YouTube history of me getting into the guts of radios and doing things like that. So. I really see if a club had build nights, you'd be more interested. Build it allows immediate feedback. Yeah. Most clubs really do build nights infrequently. Build nights are something we experimented and did a lot with WZOEEE and IEEE at college, where we had circuit boards laid out on the table with parts, and we'd say go solder them, and you can take it home. They were well attended. They were very interesting. People actually had a thing they could take home. That's super important for young people. Is that if you can give them a thing they can bring home after making it, even if it doesn't work, it's still like a token. It's an item that they can just hold, and that is super super imperative in terms of getting it out there. Now the kind of flipping that question on its head or that observation is like, how do you get young people to come to your club meeting to do those things that aren't in the ham radio world? Now, most of my experience with St. Louis Suburban Radio Club is that the kids who come in are like sons and daughters and granddaughters and grandsons of the members of the club, and that's definitely one way to get them in. But what about like the kids down the street, the kids up the street, the kids at that school, the kids over there? Like, how do we get them involved? It's definitely a thing. I'm not expecting to bring every kid into the ham radio world. That's kind of crazy talk. Arguably insanity, but it's something worth to think about because we need to. That's how marketing works. You want to get your message out to as many people as possible, so that you have as much in terms of advertising and as much revenue as possible, or as much turnaround, like click through rate or something like that. In our case, we just want people to be ham radio operators. We want them to have like a fun time in the ham radio world and. Not be discouraged by the cranky OMs out there. So, Don, you just finished your Morse Reno 32. I really wish I got one, but I didn't. Now that I, watched the build from yesterday yesterday. And I also listened to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast where they talked about it has a trainer. I knew it was a trainer, but I didn't know that it would send and it would make you send out like a phrase or a message, and then it would make you send it back in a paddle, and if you got it wrong it'd be like you got it right, it'd be ding. And that feedback of having to send it right back, that's literally training both receiving and sending at the same time, and I've never thought of that through my whole CW learning career, I guess, in Learn CW Online. That's not something it does, but it'd be something, if I could plug in a CW key into a computer and have a program like that would be pretty dope. My Ubitix is going to sit there, David, for probably years. It's just like funny how that thing's just like hanging out. It's going to like disintegrate before I even get to it. I also have an IC746 that's just sitting in a box, broken, and it has the repair IC in a little baggie taped to it, and it's just a matter of popping it open, plugging in or taking out the old IC, putting in the new one. I think there's a little bit of retuning I need to do, so I'm telling myself I need to wait till I get an oscilloscope, but I'm never going to buy an oscilloscope because I'm cheap, and like I said earlier, my budget's super tight. So like I'm gonna probably end up selling it like I sold my FT817. And then Oklahoman radio, you allude to a thing of ham radio adjacent or radio adjacent things. Everything I'm talking about is not just getting a radio, getting on the air, talking, getting on repeaters and stuff. It's not just ham radio. It's STEM. Like it's broader than just ham radio. Ham radio is a gateway into the STEM field, into engineering, into math and science and beyond. But that's so we have to keep that in mind, like that we want to like expand our reach, our perception of like what ham radio is. It doesn't have to be, a transceiver sitting on a desk and like you just sitting there and operating it. It can be. I've been doing a lot of research on things like helium and LoRa, long range radio, not amateur radio, but like Part 15 radio, and helium is this like proprietary protocol with a little box that you get, and it's for bolstering the like IoT network. And I really don't understand why people do it, besides the fact that when you use it, it gives you money. It's direct incentivization, which is a strategy that we hams rarely use in terms of like trying to get young people involved. And going back to the Japan Amateur Radio League article, it mentions how they saw a huge decline in youth, and so they provided direct incentivization by giving out free memberships, free swag, free this, free that, and they got a little bit more young people involved. But with helium, it's like a device with like some antennas, and it's a 900 megahertz radio inside. It sends out and receives LoRa packets for the Internet of Things, and it acts like a gateway to the internet. And if you have a bunch of heliums in an area that can all talk to each other, and you basically have a mesh network. It's like APRS. It's like an APRS digipeater, or an iGate rather. Probably both. It can act as both, but it's on 900 megahertz proprietary protocol that uses LoRa for transmission, and it's kind of costly, but like there's a huge uptake. Now you also have the Things Network, which is another IoT like kind of protocol system architecture community, but it isn't a developed device. It's like you kind of build your own, like a ham radio essentially. You put it on the Things Network, which is also a LoRa network. And it's also like APRS, does all the same things, except now it doesn't give you money. And so obviously you can see why helium is like, has way more users than the Things Network. However, over in Europe, whichever way, for me it's that way, the Things Network is huge. They don't really care about incentivization. They like hacking. They like playing around with these things. Lightning mapping is another like prime example of like crowdsource, like radio adjacent things that people do. But in helium over there is a lot less interesting or a lot less used. It's like, I guess Americans just love getting money. So what's in it for me? And yeah, it uses like some blockchain thing, weird technology to give you money. And I haven't really understood why people get into it, like the layman. I understand why hams would get into it because, well, it's communication. But the regular old Joe, are they just getting a helium box, paying like $200 for it to get like a flow of pennies? Because it's not very like you don't get very much money at all. Like it's probably more lucrative to start a ham radio YouTube channel than it is to run a helium node in most cases and places. But people still do it because it's just like that technology adoption thing, I guess, and the fact that it has incentivization. And there's a lot of Bitcoin nerds out there who are still riding it to the moon. It'll never get there. All right, so I've been blabbing on forever, and I'm sure all of you is so bored. Helium is gas. What is this boomer talking about? Exactly. And I'm going to let you guys go. So it's been actually an hour, so I'm done. I'm done talking. Thank you so much for hanging out and chatting with me. I hope these presentations are worthwhile. I hope you learned something. I hope it makes it interesting I hope it makes you think a little bit harder about getting young people involved. And I'm so happy to have young people in here. David, it's good to see you. And with that, I'm going to say 73. I'll catch you next time, next Wednesday. at 8 p.m. Central. We're going to talk about some more solutions workshops stuff. I'm going to play the pre-recorded version and do a live premiere again, and kind of have some back-end commentary and have everyone in the chat talk about it. That's some of our like actual like ideas we've come up with. What can we actually do? So make sure you bring a pen and pencil. Wait, no, paper and pencil, or pen and paper for that one, or Evernote, whatever floats your boat. All right, see you guys. Stay safe, like Aname Name says, and take it easy. See you next week. Thanks. Bye. How do I make it turn off? That's not what I wanted. I forgot I have to have a blooper wheel. Reel. Blooper. This is the blooper reel.
I don't think that counts.
Probably doesn't. I'm surprised no one like is trying to email me to say like, hey, your mic's still on.
Oh, like that guy my stepmom sent us the thing about?
Oh man, yeah.
Alright.
Yep. I'm not even done with my sparkling water. Oops. Thanks, David. Bye for real. Beep, beep. Almost bye for real. Okay, bye for real.